We're back! Yes, we're back. My own YouTube channel. Sorry, was a little busy over the summer after I had ACL surgery in May and missed the last AMA Supercross race of Justin Brayton's career and then the Justin Brayton shootout race in Iowa. Then I magically healed up and made it to 21 straight weekends worth of races or racing-related activities. 21 straight weekends I've been on the road, which meant I was a little busy to update my own YouTube channel. And also, so much time passed that racing series that either did not or barely existed at the time are now online. And that's what we're going to review for you here. So make sure to like and subscribe so you can motivate me to actually do some of these again. Also motivated by my sponsors. I believe they're still on board. That would be AntiGravity Batteries. So you know the score here. This one, these, do I got it here? Do I have it right? Yeah, hold on. Let me straighten these out. This battery is the same weight as the one that comes in your motorcycle, but it has a lot more cranking power. So your bike will start more quickly and it can start more often. So if you're like me and you're ham-fisted and you stall the bike in an off-road race, your battery won't be dead if you keep hitting that E-start button. Or if you're just fast and you're trying to win a race and you stall, the bike will start more quickly. Also a big advantage if you race off-road races that have dead engine starts. This battery has the same amount of juice as your stock bike, but it's way lighter. It's the choice of the highest end race teams like Monster Energy, Yamaha Star Racing. You know they don't leave anything on the table. Like seriously, if there were 50 riders on the table, they would sign them all. And they wanted to win them all this year with Eli Tomac, and they won both Monster Energy Supercross and Lucas Oil Pro Motocross with this battery and Eli Tomac's bike. Remember Washougal? When Sexton and Tomac were down and Sexton couldn't get his bike to fire? No problem. For Eli Tomac.
And then Tomac tips over. Sexton has nowhere to go. Now watch. Tomac's going to fall down again. But Sexton is hitting the electric start button and the Honda won't fire. Then they both start almost identically. And the gap stays exactly where it was.
AntiGravityBatteries.com. Also, they got batteries for your RV, your boat, your car. Lithium ion. Lighter, more powerful. Get it. Now, one other prop I need to use for this video is the globe that I stole out of my 8-year-old's bedroom. Not like he's looking at the thing anyway. He probably just Googles it. Where in the world are we today? Well, the FIM World Supercross Championship is starting this weekend. Yes, 21 weekends in a row for me at races. And I still am going to end up missing a race that also has Justin Brayton in it. I don't know. I got to get my priorities right. So where in the world are we? We are right here in the United Kingdom in Wales. Cardiff, Wales is the beginning of the FIM World Supercross Championship. But also this week, I was in Los Angeles at the LA Memorial Coliseum to announce the details of the SuperMotocross World Championship. I was the host of the press conference along with Daniel Blair. How did we end up with two different racing series that either barely existed or did not exist at the beginning of 2022? Well, I'll explain that in this video, but first I want to explain how great it is to have all these things happening at once. So much of the YouTube nation is talking about the death of everything, the horribleness of everything, clickbait titles saying that everything's bad all the time. And when it comes to motocross and supercross, the easy commentary in the comment section is to say, sport's dying. And usually the proof that the sport is dying is that someone talks about how much money NFL players are making and stuff like that, which is a completely apples to oranges. It's more like apples to potato chips comparison. Stick and ball sports are more popular because more people play them. Everyone's bounced to basketball at one point in their lives if you live in the United States. Not everyone has twisted the throttle of any sort of motorcycle. No matter what we're playing here, we are in a niche. So, World Supercross. I'd like to explain how we got here. But remember, you cannot get to a place where multiple series are throwing millions of dollars more at riders than they used to in a sport that is dying. Motocross and Supercross is not dying. As a matter of fact, manufacturers are dying to get in. There are new manufacturers jumping in, like Triumph down the line. Electric motorcycle brands seem to pop up once per week looking to get into the motocross and dirt bike space. We hear Beta's going to have a factory team. Suzuki has not given up yet, and the other manufacturers are still going full bore. I mean, seriously, if you watch Tomac versus Sexton and Yamaha versus Honda throughout this summer, does it look like they're not trying? Yeah, I don't think the sport's dying. In fact, it almost seems to be growing. It's alive and well. These are great times. We have multiple series throwing more money at the riders than ever, so now let's define those. It actually all started back in 2020, Friday of the 2020 Daytona Supercross. Dave Prater, Todd Gendro, Feld Motorsports, Supercross people approached Davey Coombs and Kerry Russell Coombs. Yes, they're my bosses on the Racer X side. They run MX Sports and MX Sports Pro Racing, the Loretta Lynn's and GNCC program, and Lucas Oil Pro Motocross. Todd and Dave said, look, man, we think there's been some rough patches in the past between Supercross and Motocross. We've just realized it's probably better business to work with you guys than against you guys. Sound good? Davey and Kerry said, yeah, sounds good. And that was about the extent of it. Yeah, we'll just be friends. And then they became besties about 5 days later when COVID shut everything down. And then they had to get on the phone and had to get on Zoom, like everybody else is doing since then, to figure out how to get all the races in. I'll make this long story short. Suffice to say, they did get all the races in 2020 by moving both of their schedules around, and then they realized, that really wasn't that painful. So then they started with a plan to how to align themselves more closely. Now, there's a specific time that seems to have missed everybody that is super critical to this, and it is June of 2021 when the FIM announced that Feld was not renewing their FIM World sanction for Monster Energy Supercross. The FIM said, thank you, Feld. We worked with you in the United States for 20 years. We had a very successful FIM World Supercross Championship run in conjunction with the AMA Supercross Championship. You have chosen not to renew, but we are not getting out of the Supercross game. No, the FIM said they will be pursuing bids for a continuation of the World Supercross Championship. It's just not going to be run by Feld Motorsports and based in the U.S. anymore. That was June of 2021. Feld chose to let it expire. Now, they never really gave a reason. They just said they let it expire. I've talked to plenty of people inside the industry. Look, if you're a fan, you probably know this. The FIM situation was never very popular in the United States. The teams didn't like it. The riders didn't like it. The WADA drug testing rules that came with the FIM, people did not like it. So really, I believe this was just a response to what the teams and riders were asking for. And also, it's a lot easier to align with the Motocross series here in the U.S. when that doesn't have an FIM sanction. But you could put the AMA pieces of the puzzle together. Essentially, Feld and MX Sports were trying to work on best practices, which is instead of fighting each other all the time, and that means you riders and you teams and Supercross and Motocross and all this, why don't we just work together, like go into meetings and instead of like, ooh, I don't want to say this, I don't want to say that, I don't want to give them leverage, I don't want to let them know what we're really thinking, let's put it all out on the table. Because remember, pre-COVID, when Feld and MX Sports first decided to be friends, I think the industry here was in a bit of a scramble. I'm not going to go so far as to say that in 2019 and 2020 it was dying, but it probably could have used a nice little kick in the rear, a little boost, a little extra gas, right? So I think at that point, everyone was starting to think, look, these dirt bike sales, they're not going to continue forever automatically. These races, they're not going to continue forever automatically. We need to work together. And one of the things that they learned in the meetings was that the FIM, not the most popular thing with the fans, teams, and riders. So the FIM sanction went away. And the FIM said they were going to find other promoters. And they did. And it's very capable people. Those that run the AusX Open Supercross, which I went to in 2019, before COVID stopped international travel like that. Great event. Great guys. Adam Bailey, Ryan Sanderson. They hooked up with Tony Cochran, who had real success building Australia's V8 Supercar Series, which is kind of the NASCAR of Australia. Really built that into a massive thing. He was on board. They got capital from Capital Venture Group from Abu Dhabi. And they whipped together something pretty quick. The idea that they could, again, I want to say this global Supercross Championship was not in the planning stages. In June of 2021, it wasn't even available. It wasn't even up for grabs. No one even knew that an FIM sanction would be something you could get for Supercross. So they've put this together in about 15 months' time to get into their first race this weekend in Wales. And that's how the new FIM World Supercross Championship came to be. But in the meantime, Feld and MX Sports had already started working on their alignment plan, and you might remember getting a email survey if you look in July of 2021. And that email survey was to ask, do you watch both motocross and supercross? Are you a fan of both motocross and supercross? Of course you are. Of course you are. Is anyone watching this say, no, I love dirt bike racing, but I only watch supercross, or I only watch motocross, and I completely ignore the other series? Yeah, they're different, but they're different in like a niche form. It's all the sport to folks like us, right? So this survey was obvious that all the answers were pretty much going to say, yeah, I watch both. And the reason that they sent out that survey in 2021 was to justify bringing the two series somewhat together. And in August of 22, the domestic people, that's Feld and MX Sports, finally announced their plan, which would be called the SuperMotocross World Championship. So I'll explain to you what that is. It's pretty simple. The regular Supercross series basically continues the way it always has been next year, and the regular National Pro Motocross series continues the way it's generally been next year, unchanged. But then at the end of that, there's going to be 3 additional races, and they're going to put $5.5 million into a pot for both individual race purse and $5.5 million that will also be used for a championship points fund out of those 3 races. Those are essentially playoffs. Now, you might love the idea of a winner-take-all playoff and a showdown, a Game 7 World Series or big Super Bowl style race. You might love that idea, or you might hate it, but you can't hate it too much, because the big reason to do this playoff is because Peacock, who decided to pick up the streaming package for this, likes it a lot. And what that means is they're willing to bid more money to get Motocross and Supercross if it includes a playoff component. And because they're willing to bid more money, the playoff component can include more money for the riders. So if you don't have playoffs, you don't have as much money to pay the riders. And everyone is a fan of getting the riders more money. So just be a playoff fan regardless, because it's resulting in more money for the riders. Meanwhile, also that FIM World Supercross Championship continued with their planning, leading to their first race this weekend in Wales. They're calling this season a pilot season. It's going to have only 2 races. What is essentially the old AUS-X Open in Australia will also take place in a few weeks. That's it. Their real rollout looks like now it's going to be 2023, and we'll really see what that series looks like, and that's going to start in the summer, which means the dates are going to conflict with Pro Motocross, and that's what really puts this at odds. Now, I'm trying to stay as diplomatic as possible. I talked about this back in March in one of these videos. Yeah, obviously I'm the television announcer for Pro Motocross. I hosted the Super Motocross press conference. I work for Racer X, which is owned by the same people that own Pro Motocross, but we can all be motocross people here, right? We can all be supercross people here, right? My question is this. There are 2 different business models for all of these series. There's 2 different business models for that FIM Global World Supercross, what we have here in the US. And hopefully the 2 different business models are different enough for both of them to be able to survive. And what I wonder on the global side is they're doing something completely different. They're not getting support from the factories at all. The factories want to keep racing going as it is. They want to race MXGP in Europe. They want to race the Supercross and Motocross series here in the US. And it's kind of refreshing news, actually, because I think a lot of fans would believe that the glitz and glamour of Supercross and traveling around the world, that's what just lights up stars and dollar sign emojis in the eyes of the factories. That's what would get them. But no, I've been told by many people, I'll name names. Ian Harrison, the team manager for Red Bull KTM here, for example, says, we sell motocross bikes. We have to have a motocross component to our factory race teams. We want to support not only the Pro Motocross Championship, but Loretta Lynn's is important to us. The motocross scouting combines, that's important to us. Amateurs, grassroots, young riders, motocross tracks, that's very important to us because that's where we sell bikes. Of course, we love Supercross. That's why we race Supercross from January through May. But we want to support the races and the race tracks where the enthusiasts buy bikes, buy gear, buy parts. That's what supports the industry. Roger DeCoster of the KTM group also told me the same thing. He's like, if we don't have great motocross races, there isn't an incentive for motocross tracks to try to improve themselves, to try to seed the sport. You have to have motocross and support motocross to sell motocross bikes. So that's the model that the American teams like. A lot of Supercross, a lot of motocross, but they've got to have both. Meanwhile, there's a Supercross-only model in this FIM Global Supercross Championship, and the riders were talking about it in their press day today, how Supercross is very big internationally, it's very popular, and maybe this will help get those fans to the races for the first time because they haven't been able to check them out, or maybe it will create new fans. But they don't have the factory model over there because the factories don't want to participate. So because of that, they've had to run a different model, and that is supporting the private teams with some money that they've put up from their capital investments. And the teams obviously are pumped to get a paycheck. Will they look at those paychecks as, okay, this is going to fund an all-out attack and effort to win the FIM #1 plate? Or will they look at it as, sweet, if we spend the minimum amount of money, we can actually profit from racing? I think that's supposed to be seed money. Like, here's some money to help you and then spend more on good riders and parts and all that stuff to try to win. I believe in these very first races here, the teams are a little bit on the fence, so I think they're trying to spend as little as possible. But, there's a chance that series becomes prestigious enough for them to go all in. But really what it comes down to is this on the business model side, that FIM Global World Supercross Championship, because it doesn't have the factory money, they've got to hope that they can bring in enough income with sponsors and ticket revenue and TV revenue to pay those teams to make it worth their while to be there. Where in the US, a lot of support for the teams is coming from bike sales, the industry in general, you, the enthusiasts that are buying the stuff for motocross bikes. That's paying a lot of the bills. Now, I think when you talk about YouTube here and people saying that the riders are underpaid and the sport is dying, I think that's because a lot of you might not realize how much money the factories are putting up. When Eli Tomac wins a race, he's making more than $100,000. Jason Anderson won, the last 4 rounds of Monster Energy Supercross? He probably made $500,000 in bonuses from Kawasaki and his other sponsors in 4 weekends. $500,000 in 4 weekends. A championship bonus from a race team for 450s is $1 million. A championship bonus for a 250 rider is $500,000. Those numbers aren't published, but it's not chump change. That's what's keeping the riders in America really going. I know there are complaints all the time about the purse, and the purse is going up as part of the Supercross Motocross World Championship next year, but you have to factor in the factory dollars. The FIM Global Supercross Championship won't have that. So can they fill that hole with enough entertainment revenue, tickets, and TV, and sponsorship to fill that hole and make it worth the while of the riders? Yes, they have a big capital investor, but investors eventually want to make their money back. They're not putting $50 million up to just spend it. They want to make $51 million at some point. So those are the 2 series. Next year, we'll have the regular Supercross Championship, Monster Energy AMA Supercross, the regular Pro Motocross Championship, and 3 races after that. That's all domestic. That's all in the United States. The regular champions of Supercross and Motocross, and then 3 more races after that to determine what is called the SuperMotocross World Championship. That's 3 playoff races, which might be the most exciting thing ever. But even if you don't think it's not the most exciting thing ever, remember, playoffs excited the television media partners to get the rights deal high enough to pay the riders more money. This weekend is starting something separate, which is the FIM Global Supercross Championship in Wales, featuring Justin Brayton, which ironically enough, the last race I didn't go to was the last race Justin Brayton is in. And now after 21 weekends, the first race I'm not going to is the next race Justin Brayton's in. Have fun in Wales, everybody. 2 new series have begun in 2022 alone. And there's new teams and new factories coming in and a whole lot of money. Sport is not dying.